Hello, welcome to week 12 of History 2204. We just have a few weeks left. In fact, as I count, 4 weeks left. This week we're going to be talking about the interwar period from 1919 to about 1933. um, you know, some of the things we'll be discussing will sort of go in later into the 30s, but that's essentially what we are. That's what we're talking about here. Next week, the entire week will be dedicated to World War II. The week after that, we'll talk about the Cold War, both mostly in Europe, but we will talk about sort of the international ramifications of the Cold War. And then the last war will essentially go from sort of 1991, the sort of the end of the Cold War, to now. And I will talk about the Eurozone crisis, what's going on, sort of yesterday. In fact, big things were going on yesterday, but in a couple weeks, it'll be a different yesterday. And so we'll talk about that. Real questions about the future of Europe. I just heard my son. I laid him down for a nap, but I heard him open his door. Okay, and then we'll have a final. For those of you who want to know, the final will be the exact same format. There will be 2 questions, and you'll answer both in 500 words for a total of 1,000 words. You'll probably have more. Well, I don't know. I don't know how many days you'll have. You'll have as many days as I can sort of give you, but still have time to sort of get grades done and do what I need to do. There are some graduating seniors in this class, and it looks to me, excuse me, that with the change to semesters, there was always an issue with graduating seniors. You always had to get their tests graded really quickly, usually. It looks to me like graduation is sort of delayed. I think there's finals weekends, and then it's sort of a long time, or a week and a half maybe until graduation, or like 6 days. So that shouldn't be an issue for those of you graduating seniors. To sort of stay in contact though, or keep your ears peeled, because I'll give you as much time as I can to do the final. But I do have a guideline that I'll get phone calls and emails from people saying, "Why don't you have these?" We're trying to make sure all of our seniors can graduate, and so you need to get your grades, and I need to take care of that. So, okay. Again, if you ever want to talk to me, please shoot me an email. I'm usually working, 3 to 3.5 days a week, as I talked about in the beginning of this class. Sort of 12, 13 hours. I show up about 7 or so and work till basically I'm cross-eyed. I can't concentrate anymore. So I'm always available. And I'll talk more about that, because I do want to. If you really want to improve on the final in your writing. I want to encourage you to come see me, and I will help. I'll sort of march through some things. So we'll talk about sentence structure, and I'll help you. I will fix, or I will really give you advice. Just one quick note: what I'm not going to do is do that for if you email me your paper. And the reason is not because I don't, because I want you to get something out of this, and that something isn't just a little higher grade. I want you to, writing is something that you will have to do. I hate to, no matter how, what sort of field you go into, you are going to have to write. Some far more than others, and it's not easy. When I think you can read my comments. He's being pretty harsh, and maybe I am. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to be honest. I spend a lot of time. It takes me about 50 minutes to do a paper. I could go faster. I could do one in 7 or 8 minutes. And that's what a lot of people do. And so you get papers back with a few comments and sort of things like work on your grammar. Look at the rules of writing or something. I don't do that. I go through every sentence. And I pay a lot of time. I still don't correct or do everything. But I spend a lot of time. Another notion is that if you have a higher score, you have less red marks or red writing, because I'm doing it on the computer. That's not true. Sometimes a really well done paper, an A paper, will have just as many as an F paper, because with an F paper it can be really hard. Like, it's sort of hard to do anything. You just say, boy, this, let's be honest. You probably didn't spend very much time on it. You sort of did this at 11. You started at 11 o'clock, and you had an hour to do it. Look, I was an undergraduate, and I was not. I was not always a good student. I'll say that. So I know how it goes. But in a paper, you can make just a suggestion about every sentence, so that the number of red marks will be the same. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to this week. This week's broken up into two different units, two different topics. One is the Treaty of Versailles. We sort of ended at the armistice last week. Usually I will always talk about the Treaty of Versailles. Obviously, it comes right after World War I. It's sort of part of World War I, but there was so much information last week, I really decided to push the Treaty of Versailles into this week. It would have just been too much. You'll read a little bit about it. There's just a couple pages in the textbook, and then I have a presentation about it. And it's important, really, really important. This sort of sets the foundation for World War II, so pay attention. The second unit, there's two sort of subtopics, and that's sort of the interwar period in general. And the first one is about sort of culture and art. And you notice I've spent a lot of time talking about high culture, art, novels, philosophers, and I think, and most people who teach talk about those things, but not as much as I do. And a question is, well, why do you do that? And what I would, there's lots of, one is that's what I sort of study and what I know most about. The other thing I would say is that those people, I hate to sort of sound, elitist, although I don't care about that label if somebody wants to say that. Is that they're the smartest people alive usually, and they're a good barometer, right? So on the one hand, you can read 500 letters written from factory workers, back into their spouses if they're sort of working in a factory and not living at home for whatever reason, and that happens for various reasons. And they're talking about what happened in World War I. Their experiences, or if they didn't fight, what they're seeing in the factory with people who did fight. And that's a perfectly valid, but it might take a lot of letters to sort of get through. Or you can look at the painting of, Otto Dix, who's a German who fought in World War I on the German side. And, you can look at 7 of his paintings and get the same thing. One's just a lot more, expedient. So that's one of the reasons I do it. And you can imagine that World War I has a big influence on these people. It really, really impacts them. That's the first thing you're going to talk about in the second unit. The last thing is we'll talk about, or we're going to sort of discuss politics at this time. The rise of totalitarianism and fascism. How did these things come about? Where do they fit in the tradition of the Enlightenment? Where do they fit in the tradition of democracy and all these things? A lot of people, I think, would say that those two things, let's say totalitarianism, because fascism would sort of be a subtopic under totalitarianism, and Stalinist sort of communism would be sort of another one. You can have a communist country that's not totalitarian. You can sort of create one in your head. They've all sort of been that, and that's probably not a surprise either. And so some people say that they are sort of antithetical to the Western tradition, and I might say that they are in fact sort of some elements of the Enlightenment tradition taken to their sort of most extreme, or taken to their logical conclusion, but a conclusion that sort of denigrates certain parts of the Enlightenment. And so that's just something to sort of think about, and as you're doing the reading of the textbook and as you're looking at the presentation. The last thing you'll do is you're going to watch a documentary, a very good one. That's about 45 minutes long. There's 6 episodes to it. You're just going to watch the first one. After summer or something, if you're interested, you can watch the other 5. It's good. The name of the documentary is called "The Nazis: A Warning from History." The first episode is called "Helped into Power," and it's basically going to go from 1919 to 1933, and really it does a very good job at sort of showing how it wasn't inevitable that Hitler would sort of rise to power, right, at all. That there was just a lot of accidents and mistakes, and people say, some people say, well, Hitler was voted into office. He wasn't voted into office. In fact, he lost the presidency. But he was appointed chancellor by the president, which is a cabinet position. And the idea was, anyway, I don't want to get into too much because the documentary, I think, does a good job of showing why that decision was made. And a lot of people on the more traditional right didn't like that. They said, this guy is, first of all, Germany was still a very aristocratic society, and Hitler was not an aristocrat. This guy is, he's a commoner. Like, what are you doing? But there were people who said, look, we need his sort of we need his support of people in there. We need the workers who are in the German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. We need their support, and so we have to sort of, and if we appoint him, we can sort of control him. That was the sort of idea. It doesn't work out that way, but that was the idea. Okay. Good luck, and that's it.